Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. First, hazardous weather graphic. We've got a winter weather advisory out for the Susitna Valley starting at 6 a.m. Saturday morning and will continue until 6 a.m. Sunday morning. And looking at anywhere, well, actually the area is north of Talkeetna on up to the pass up there, Cantwell, and in toward Denali, and then back up along the Alaska Range. That's where the area, that's where the advisory's out for. Could see 4 to 8 inches of snow during that time in those areas. And of course, it'll be pretty wet snow, but still a pretty good possibility that that'll pan out. Otherwise, high wind warning out for the Alaska Range there. That kicks into effect later on tomorrow. And could see gusts over 60 miles an hour from the south-southeast here, mainly through the passes. Wind advisory there just to the north at the lower elevations on the north side. And then winter storm warnings are out here for the west central interior areas. Could see 6 to 10 inches of snow starting tomorrow morning, give or take there, and then continuing through tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, and into possibly, I think, until 6 a.m. Sunday. Otherwise, winter weather advisories there for much of the Seward Peninsula, Yukon Delta, and winter storm warning here for the Seward Peninsula, the Seward Peninsula coast right out there, Teller, Tin City, and St. Lawrence Island. And up to the north, we've got winter weather advisories also out here for the Kobuk Valley and the central interior there, the Koyukuk Valley and the Kobuk Valley in Bettles. Winter storm warning for the McGrath-Nikolai area there in the Kuskokwim Valley extends all the way down. And from there, moving on to satellite imagery, we have trough right through here pushing by, not particularly strong, but kept the clouds in and areas of light snow with that, and a break here as skies clear with ridging that's building up ahead of this big storm out here to the west. Otherwise, another trough coming onto the western Arctic coast there. That kind of kicked the snow up a little bit, areas of light snow there, and became a little more breezy. Really no heavy amounts at all with this system, either one of those troughs. Very light snowfall amounts with that. Heavier precipitation though, and a lot stronger winds here over the Bering Sea, especially in advance of this front. Winds gusting anywhere from 50 to 70 miles an hour. And of course, storms warnings, gale warnings out, and that all pushing up toward the southwest coast. And pushing up, already have the high, thick cirrus up over St. Lawrence Island here. And but the bulk is, or the main push of the front is northward here, and it's just ever so slowly pushing off to the east. So that means south-north flow, the area of moderate to heavy rain, is going to be really slow moving along there. So some areas can pick up a fair amount of precipitation. Storm force northerly winds occurring back here on the west side of that low center over the western Aleutians. Southeast coast, trough sliding on down to the southeast, kind of cutting in southern area. Actually, two separate systems. You had this one and then that one coming in. And showers are on the decrease there today and this afternoon, taking a little longer over the southern panhandle. But those should be hopefully over by tomorrow morning, or if not tonight, then by tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. And there's a shower activity there, nothing really heavy. And of course, depending on your elevation, whether it fell in the form of snow. Weak trough here with the light snow and snow flurries, snow showers, tapering off, clearing skies, somewhat higher pressure kind of in between the two big highs here over the Russian Far East and then over the Northeast Pacific. Kind of a weak ridge through here, head of the pretty strong storm system. Still the center south of the Aleutians, and that kept the winds from being as strong as they would have been had that low center been more to the north, and you had the front to the west of you. You'd probably seen maybe 20 miles an hour on peak wind gusts higher than what you had. Anyway, quite windy today, Pribilofs, with rain moderate to heavy at times, just making landfall on the southwest coast, beginning to increase over Bristol Bay. And for tonight, continues to move inland slowly. Mixed precipitation or snow here pushing into the west central interior, Yukon to Kuskokwim Delta, to a lesser extent staying dry over Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. Increasing clouds here from Kodiak up across Cook Inlet. Fair to the east and to the north, less in the way of any snow shower activity along the Arctic coast. Storm force northerlies here for the western Aleutians, and just about no wind, lack of gradient, high pressure really built in over the panhandle tonight, and all that shower activity well off to the southeast. Tomorrow, just a risk of some showers. I'm not sure where that moisture is coming from, but I threw it in since the model had it. Live by the model, you die by it. Otherwise, mostly sunny elsewhere. Heavy rain, strong winds, front pushing eastward here, kind of redeveloping in this area, and the new low forming into the southern Bering Sea, and the old one down to the south. And then for Sunday, again, not much of an eastward movement. Those two low centers stay out here. This one finally getting on the north side of the Aleutian chain, but really strong winds, heavy rains. Seward, for example, could see 4 inches of rain this weekend or more, and moderate to heavy precipitation right up in the central interior and back to the west. And mostly cloudy southern southeast coast, mostly sunny south. Mixture of rain or snow, a lot of warm air surging northward here with this system, so even mixed precipitation north slope on out to the Arctic coast, the exception being the higher elevations of the Berks Range. And for lows tonight, 5 below to 5 above here for the Berks Range, otherwise teens warming into the 20s, Tanana Valley, 30s, maybe 30 to 37, maybe some upper 20s in the Panhandle possible, and near 40 for Kodiak Island, mid to upper 40s here for the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. Highs for tomorrow, 50s, mid-50s there on the lee side of the Alaska Range, with that warm air getting mixed down. Upper 30s, St. Lawrence Island, you can see highs popping up at Unalakleet above the frost point tomorrow afternoon. Mid-30s, the Tanana Valley, and lower 40s, southern Alaska, 40s for the Panhandle, and for the high Sunday or the low Sunday morning, 5 to 15 above in the north, 45 to 50 Bristol Bay, followed by highs Sunday afternoon, staying in the teens, lower to mid-teens there for the Berks Range, lower 20s here, Koyukuk, upper Yukon Valley areas, 20s for the Arctic coast, and 45 to 53 for the Panhandle, and 50 to 55 again for the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay areas.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, we've got IFR extending from all the west central Aleutians there, north-northeast through the Bering Sea, and then taking a turn to the east here across St. Lawrence Island, Norton Sound, southern Seward Peninsula, and the Donado Hills. VFR over the central eastern interior, even the Arctic coast, Kodiak Island, and the Panhandle. And then for the afternoon, we'll see a big jump to the northeast here, both the marginal VFR and IFR, becoming IFR along the Alaska Range, Western Alaska, Central Alaska Range, and late in the afternoon, IFR into the Copper River Basin there, and conditions falling up over the central interior, marginal VFR Seward Peninsula, holding on to VFR, Berks Range out North Slope and the Arctic coast, and marginal VFR starting to develop here over the northern Panhandle. Maybe it's kind of hard to probably see an increase in the clouds, but how widespread the marginal VFR gets is kind of iffy. And then for Sunday morning, we've got probably better chance of marginal VFR here for the southeast coast. IFR right across the central interior in areas, with IFR continuing southern central Alaska on the southern slopes of the Central Alaska Range and the eastern slopes of the Western Range. Barren Islands, Kodiak Island, marginal there. Big area of IFR here over the eastern and central Bering Sea. And then for Sunday afternoon, this area pretty much holds in place out here, dissipates a little bit, and we've got IFR, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, continued southerly flow, south-southeast flow, so upslope areas of the terrain will see the lowest flying conditions, especially along the Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound, Brooks Range now. And for Anaktuvik, VFR tomorrow, another VFR day for Adigan. There will be VFR through tomorrow. And then Lake Clark and Merrill starting out VFR becoming IFR in the latter part of the afternoon. Rainy trending down as well, starting out VFR becoming IFR later on. Windy, VFR becoming marginal VFR in the past, but southern entrance likely going IFR at sometime in the mid to latter part of the afternoon. And for Isabel, VFR becoming marginal, but I think Bentasta, moisture won't reach there through tomorrow afternoon anyway. And Tanita, VFR becoming marginal, and Portage starting out marginal, becoming IFR, probably before noon, around noontime, and Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet with southerly flow up into southern Norton Sound, 4,000 feet right in its heels, 6,000 feet back down across Bristol Bay, and then 10,000 feet up to about Sand Point. And from there, taking a look at icing, pretty good widespread area of isolated moderate rime icing here in the lighter shaded areas, but considerable moderate in areas, especially along terrain enhanced areas, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Southwest Mountains, and up along the Yukon rivers, while St. Lawrence Island below 2,000 feet here in the northern areas, but with warm air above 9,000 feet for the Alaska Peninsula, about 3,000 feet out there over the Aleutians. Taking a look at the jet stream. Again, kind of a high amplitude pattern here. We've got ridging out over the, across Kamchatka Peninsula, this trough deepening and this ridge amplifying up. Pretty good jet. In fact, that's going to result in a slow movement of the system here with the increased north to south flow. And then where the Arctic jet meets this other jet, 160 knots out of the west-northwest there across the northeast interior, 130 knots right down along and near the Panhandle. 3,000-foot winds, anywhere from 55 to 75 knots here from the south up into Bristol Bay, 60 knots, Kuskokwim Valley, lighter up to the northeast, 10 to 20 for the Panhandle. And for the Aleutians, they're near the low center here, less gradient and winds are lighter, down to 25 knots or even 15 to 20 right through here. But the backside, real tight gradient up to 50 to 55 knots, Amchitka Island to Shemya. 3,000 feet, same pattern here, very slow-moving low pressure area, still south of the Aleutians through tomorrow afternoon. Southerlies 35 knots, eastern Aleutians 55 to 60 coming up across Bristol Bay there. And then 50 to 60 knot winds getting in toward Kamishak Bay. Quite a difference here, 15 knot winds, say over the Talkeetnas to 50 knots, Alaska Range westward, and then back down pretty light, more westerly up over the northern interior areas. Southeast coast, not bad. Northwest, 10 to 15 knots. Turbulence, areas of severe from western Alaska Range down along the Aleutian Range, areas of the Aleutians, central Aleutians, otherwise moderate chop in the other shaded areas.
Dual polarization technology is a major upgrade to the current radar system. It allows forecasters a better idea of what's actually out there and can help keep you safe.
Current radar technology transmits and receives information in the horizontal direction, which is very limited. Dual polarization technology, in addition to the horizontal, transmits and receives vertical energy, which allows forecasters to get information about the size, shape, and phase of the precipitation. We can use that information to better determine the precipitation type to expect at your given location.
There you have it. This new technology is currently being installed in radars across the country and is already being used by National Weather Service forecasters to produce better, more accurate forecasts. Learn more here and follow us. Want to know about the future of weather radar? Well, the National Severe Storms Lab has it here with its new phased array radar. Let's check it out.
It's a non-moving radar. It has 4 faces of the antenna, each pointing in different directions. One of the big advantages is that we're seeing so far, it can sample the area around the radar in less than a minute, maybe even a half a minute. And this is 5-6 times faster than what they can do today.
NSSL is leading the development of future weather radar with this project. Learn more here and follow us. The Storm Prediction Center is one of the NOAA weather partners. They are located in the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. Greg Carbon gives us a glimpse into what the SPC does.
Our mission is to analyze and forecast severe thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes, large hail, and damaging winds from those thunderstorms across the lower 48 states, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. One of the primary missions of the Storm Prediction Center is the issuance of severe thunderstorm and tornado watches across the country when conditions appear to be coming together to support the development of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes.
The world-class meteorologists in the Storm Prediction Center specialize in severe weather and keeping you safe. Learn more here and follow us.
The National Severe Storms Lab is working on increasing the lead time for severe weather warnings. The national average for tornado warnings is currently 13 minutes, but more notice would be helpful, especially for those in charge of moving large groups to shelter. Warn on Forecast will help forecasters issue hazardous weather warnings earlier. The project will give them more info about the chances of strong winds, large hail, and even tornadoes.
Currently, warnings are created by forecasters looking at the atmosphere outside, understanding its volatility, and then comparing that to how they see the Doppler radar presenting what's going on inside thunderstorms. Warn on Forecast is an idea where we're going to take the massive amounts of satellite, radar, and surface data and stick them all into a very high resolution prediction model. And then by producing new forecasts every 15 or 20 minutes, the forecasters hopefully will be able to use that model to produce warnings that extend out to an hour.
Before the National Weather Service can use this tool, it must be developed and tested. One big challenge will be deciding how to get the model predictions to the forecasters.
I'm going to keep this one very low. I'm just adjusting the track.
These hazardous weather prediction models are going to produce a huge amount of output. And this fire hose of data is just too much for forecasters to handle in real time quickly. So in order to help deal with that, NSSL has developed a related project called Facets. And Facets is the methodology which will enable forecasters to focus very quickly on the most important threats.
Once Warn on Forecast and Facets are proven to be reliable and effective, then forecasters will be better able to inform you of threats nearby. Learn more here and follow us.
The Hazardous Weather Testbed is located at the National Weather Center in Norman, Oklahoma. It is used for experiments that will allow forecasters to learn and apply new technologies.
The Hazardous Weather Testbed is a really unique space throughout all of NOAA. And this is where the researchers and the operational folks come together in a common space to solve operational problems and to test new research tools that the research community is working on. The goal is to accelerate the transfer from research to operations of the newest tools and techniques.
People come from around the world to collaborate on this unique project.
We can bring together not only NOAA people, but also university people, faculty, researchers, private sector meteorologists, folks working in other countries in meteorology, forecasters can all come together and focus on what the problem of the day is with the forecasters.
Each spring, several experiments occur in the Hazardous Weather Testbed. Learn more here and follow us.
What are you looking at? And what are you ignoring? Did you notice the NOAA logo in the corner? Forecasters have a lot of information in front of them too. Every second counts during severe weather, and decisions about where to focus are constantly being made. This could be even more challenging in the future. Phased array radar will produce 4 to 6 times more information than what we have now, which brings us to the question researchers are hoping to answer. Will more radar information affect forecasters' decisions?
From our past experiments, we've learned a lot about how forecasters think during the warning decision process, but we've also learned that those thought processes are very complex, and for that reason, we need a better way to be able to track forecasters' cognitive activity.
Inbounds and possibly golf ball sized hail.
And eye tracker is a piece of technology that is used to determine in real time where someone's eye gaze is located. And these eye trackers are typically video-based, which means a camera sits below a computer monitor, and with infrared light and vector analysis, we can determine where a person is looking and how their eyes are moving.
Eye tracking is already being used in the medical field and air traffic control. Using similar research methods, NSSL is discovering the benefit for weather forecasting too. Phased array radar will give forecasters a lot more to think about. Understanding their decision-making process will help researchers develop even more user-friendly tools. So what's the benefit for you? Even better weather warnings. To learn more, check us out online and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
I watched PBS Kids growing up for as long as I can remember. I watched a lot of Arthur and Caillou and Reading Rainbow. I watched the Anne of Green Gables animated series. That's how I was familiar with the story. I definitely related to Anne in the way that she's energetic and curious about everything. I think that's what's great about PBS, is just all the diverse kinds of series that you could just sit back and look at the world around you and appreciate all the little things.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. For the southeast coast tomorrow, northwest 15 knots on the south coast, west-southwest at 10. On the north side with seas anywhere from 8 to 9 feet. Southerlies 10 knots, central northern inside waters of the panhandle there with pretty low seas at 2 feet or less. Northwest 10 for Clarence Strait. And then on Sunday, not much change. Northwest wind 10 knots, Clarence Strait, and really light winds for the central northern inside waters. Pretty light winds here on the central coast from the west-southwest at 10 knots. North coast, southeast 15. South coast, northwest 15. And Prince William Sound tomorrow, east 15 knots. 20 knots from the southeast there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, but the west side here, south of Kenai Peninsula, east winds 30 knots and good gales for the Barrens, southeast 40 knots and 45 knots sustained out of the east there for Kamishak Bay, and you see the sea heights nearing 20 feet. Cook Inlet, southern Cook Inlet, that's a northeast arrow that fell off of there. 30 knots, 7-foot seas, 20 knots, northern Cook Inlet. And for Sunday, again, now we got the 45-knot winds here over the Barren Islands and east 40 knots in Kamishak Bay, northeast 30, no change. Southern Cook Inlet picking up a little north of the Forelands at 25 knots. Otherwise, southeasterly gales here for the North Gulf Coast and winds kicking up to 30 knots, sustained 30 knots Prince William Sound on Sunday with 7-foot seas. Kodiak Island, east-southeast 40 to 45 knots, seas 21 feet here on the Pacific side, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southeast 45. And Castle Cape to St. Cape Sarychev, southeast 40, 26-foot seas. And we've got southeast winds at 30 knots there on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula in that marine zone, but 50 knots. Storm warnings for Bristol Bay, southeast 50 knots, seas 13 feet. And then for Sunday, that comes down a little bit. It looks like a pretty windy weekend coming up for Bristol Bay as well as the Alaska Peninsula here. South 35 for gales, and again, just falling under the storm force criteria there for Bristol Bay. Holds 45 knots out of the south there from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Kodiak Island 45 knots on the east side. Chillicothe Strait down to about 30. Fox Island southeast mostly 25 knots. Seas 10 to 21 feet. Northeast 25 to 30 knots here for the central Aleutians, and then that tight gradient out of the west on the west side of that low continues those storm force northerlies. 45 to 50 knots there, with the strongest winds occurring from about Kiska Island over to just west of Adak. And then for Sunday, gales continue, lose the storms. We got minimum gales holding over the western Aleutians, and then west central area is northwest at 40 knots, northwest 35 to 40 knots, Adak and Atka. And for Unalaska Island, south to southeast 25 to 30 knots. That's good for small craft advisories. And Nunavak Island, north to northwest 20 to 25 knots. Kuskokwim Delta coastline, southeast 45 knots. Yukon Delta coast, east 35 knots tomorrow. Back up to 45 knots from the east for St. Lawrence Island. East-southeast 30 knots. Northern Bering Sea and the Pribilof Islands. Outlook for Sunday, southeast 15 for the Pribilof. South 40 now, again along the southwest coast there. Excuse me. Northeast at 40 knots for the Northern Bering Sea. Southeast 25 for the Yukon Delta coast. East winds 30 knots. Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. And up along the Beaufort Sea coast, small craft advisories tomorrow on the east side there, 25 to 30 knots from the west. West 20 knots, central coast, southwest 15 on the west side. And from Wales up to Cape Lisburne or Cape Thompson, east 30 knots. Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, kind of in a light wind area there for a change. You're going to see east winds at about 10 with 4-foot seas. Moving on to Sunday, kind of a really uniform wind pattern setting up here for the central and eastern Arctic coast. East 25 knots, seas 5 feet. And increasing to gale force winds probably around Point Lay on down, where it'll turn northeast to Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson at 35 knots. So gales all the way down to Cape Beaufort, or Cape Thompson, I'm sorry. And then Chukchi Sea, Cape Thompson to Wales, east at 30. And for tonight, here's a huge storm here with a really pretty good strong frontal boundary that's pushing northward. A lot of warm air following that warm front up behind. So we got the winter storm warnings out, winter weather advisories, and such here due to the mixed precipitation, snow, wet snow, maybe even some glaze. But strong winds, rain, moderate to heavy at times, especially the Alaska Peninsula and the front crossing the eastern Aleutians. High pressure builds in over the panhandle for dry conditions, light winds, and a fair amount of clearing that'll extend up the eastern interior of the state. And tomorrow the front moves east and northeast and even sets up right over the Kenai Peninsula on Sunday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.
So the favorite thing that I like to watch is